today we have the honor to chat with the Megadeth legend, David Ellefson. What's up, David?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you, David?
I'm very good, yeah. So you're currently promoting your latest book, More Life with Deth, through a series of bass clinics, signing sessions and shows. Next dates are in the UK, mainland Europe, and Latin America. Can you describe a little bit the concept of these different variations of the Basstory Tour?
Yeah, every one is going to be a little different. You know, the first show that I'm kicking off, which started originally just kind of doing a book signing up at KK Steel Mill up in Wolverhampton, and KK being a dear friend, and obviously we like to play music, and we've never played music together, so we're going to get on stage and fire up a big thing with Tim Ripper Owens and Les Binks and my partner Tom and AJ Mills. So we're going to fire off one show. So that's kind of a standalone show on November 3rd. And then November 4th, we'll be down into London in the Underworld. And that's going to be a bit more similar to what I've been doing here in America with the Sleeping Giants band, being a full band set, playing some of the classic songs people know me for, as well as some new material off my new Sleeping Giants album, and a little book signing afterwards. And I'll do that same type of thing across Europe, across Italy, and one date in Switzerland. And then when I wrap up in Rome, a couple days later, I will be starting the Latin America Basstory. And that's going to be slightly different. I'm going to actually use some local musicians in every city. Part of that is just because I want to involve local musicians as well as fans. There's a lot of cover bands, tribute bands, and various musicians who I just thought it would be fun for them to get up and to basically play some songs together. So that'll be a little bit more like my bass stories were in 2018, and even earlier this year in 2019 when I was doing Basstory across Europe. So everyone's going to be a little bit different, which I think sets the stage for a unique experience for the fans and everybody who comes to these shows.
Yeah, definitely. So this is your second book after 2013's My Life with Deth, and have you found something therapeutic about writing that you couldn't express through music, or what was your motivation to write the second part?
I like to write. I found over the years, that I'm probably, if there was a word for me, it would be communicator. And sometimes I do that with a bass. Sometimes I do it with a guitar. Sometimes I do it just like you and me are doing right now, talking over the phone. Other times it's writing a book. Maybe it's doing a Basstory masterclass, clinic, performance, etc. So, it's all about just communicating, communicating thoughts, ideas, creative things, creating it out to your audience. And, the books are just one of those ways to do that. And, you can do things in a book you can't do in a song, and vice versa. And, I think with More Life with Deth, the thing that kind of the sweet spot I hit on it, because a lot of this stuff, with social media, man, it's like everything is so immediate, and people kind of know, oh, we've got a record label, we've got a coffee company. So, I talked about those things in the book, some of the backstory to them, got a little deeper into some of the, the underpinnings and workings of those processes. But I think the one thing that was kind of an unexpected sweet spot in the story for me was, as I started talking about acquiring the rights to Combat Records and relaunching that record label, it took me way back to the origin of Megadeth, to 1983, of when and how the band started, and had some of my childhood friends from Minnesota who moved out to California when we met Dave and got the band started, and had them weigh in and give some personal testimonies about that. I think those, to me, I had as much fun reading their personal testimonies in my book as I did reading what I wrote about it. And so to go back, so the Combat event really took me back to the earliest days of Megadeth. And that's largely been an untold part of the Megadeth history. Kind of Rust in Peace onward has largely been, pretty told and pretty well known. A lot of those artifacts live online and on YouTube and whatnot. But I think the early days in the 80s, it was really fun to go back and open that chapter up and really dig deep in and again get these personal testimonies from other band members and friends who were with me on the journey back then.
Yeah. That's very interesting. And you mentioned your this compilation album, Sleeping Giants, and well, there's a lot of metal stuff in that, and different with different musicians. But I was very surprised by the tracks you did with David, Glen, Eisley, and it's quite softer than what you do in Megadeth or your other bands. What's the story behind this partnership?
With the Sleeping Giant songs, you mean?
With David, Glen, Eisley, this soft rock kind of tracks.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, on the Countdown to Extinction tour in 1993, we had a tour break, and I met up with a friend of Nick Menza's. His name was Pat Chunk, and we used to mountain bike ride in the hills there in Los Angeles and hang out. And Pat and I became fast friends, and we started doing some writing because he's also a songwriter, and so we began doing some writing together, and I put some of those songs on Sleeping Giants because there were some demos that we'd written, and I really just loved the songs, and they weren't, one of them, If You Were God, which features John Bush on vocals, was something I actually did bring in as a consideration to the Euthanasia record, and it didn't really fit the sort of the scope of where that record was going, so it didn't make the cut, but it's a great song that I just have always loved. I wrote the music, Pat wrote the lyrics, and John Bush sang it. So, to include that is been really fun because John Bush and we do stuff with Metal Allegiance, and we've been friends for many, many years. So it's been fun to really collaborate with him again, even on stage, singing that song when I do Basstory shows. And then there's some other stuff, that I did with F5. During the 2000s, and the David, Glen, Eisley stuff. He was a friend of Pat Chunk's. They were in a group together called Dirty White Boy, which featured David, Glen, Eisley, some members of a group called Autograph, who were a pretty popular radio rock band here in America during the 80s. And so to write and have different singers come in, and these were really just demos. And I thought, these things have been sitting in the vault, literally sleeping in the vault, yet I felt they were pretty cool songs. So, I think the title Sleeping Giants is not only a good title for the lead-off track on the record, but it's also a good, I think it's a good description of the songs that are embodied on the album.
Yeah, exactly. Well, since we're running out of time slowly, I don't know if you're okay with a couple of Megadeth-related questions.
Yeah.
How's the process of the new album going on? Do we have any potential release date for it?
We don't. With Dave's throat cancer treatments that he is now completed, and he's just going through the recovery now, and we're hopeful and optimistic about a full recovery with for him with that. And but yeah, once he's through that process, and we're going to just let that take as much time as it needs, and then we'll resume with the album. So I'd like to hope maybe 2020 we'll be able to get a new album out.
Yeah, hopefully it works out like that. And well, connected to that also, you mentioned a little bit of Dave's situation, and like considering that it's the Megacruise is upcoming and you have some confirmed dates for the beginning of next year in Europe. How do you see Dave's recovery in order to play like live?
Yeah, again, I think with the cruise, really that's, we're really just taking that a day at a time. Me, Dirk and Kiko are going to be on the boat and holding down the fort, and doing some musical stuff ourselves on there to just kind of keep the celebration of all things Megadeth, but definitely giving Dave the time and the space to heal and recover. That's first and foremost for this week. And then moving into the new year, with the Five Finger Death Punch Bad Wolves tour, hopefully Dave will be ready to go. And and so sometimes life throws you a card you didn't expect, and you just try to, Megadeth, we've always been a resilient band, and we've always just worked around obstacles, and Dave's a fighter, as we know. So I think he's just talking to him. He sounds very optimistic about the future for Megadeth.
Yeah, that sounds great, and like hopefully things he recovers. Well, thank you, David, for your time. It was a pleasure to talk with you. Take care. Have a great mega cruise, and send my best wishes to Dave.
Okay, man. Thanks, David. See you. Bye bye.
Yeah, bye bye.